Should the debt ceiling be a bargaining chip in the battle over cutting the deficit? It is a hot debate right now. House Speaker John Boehner says Republicans will not agree to raise the debt ceiling unless the president cuts spending by some $2 trillion. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, for his part, a Republican as well, says using the borrowing limit as a bargaining chip is, quote, risky and could result in higher bond yields worsening the deficit. So who's right? I don't know, but Lee Sachs has as good an idea as anyone. Lee was Assistant Treasury Secretary the last time a serious battle over the debt ceiling took place during the Clinton administration. He's also had a long career on Wall Street and is currently CEO of Alliance Partners, a company that advises small banks on lending practices. Lee is right here beside me. Lee, there's a Shakespearean quality to all of this, a debate within a debate. But really, at the end of the day, who is right? Should the debt ceiling be a bargaining chip in the deficit debate?
Good morning, Art. Thank you for having me. So Chairman Bernanke, as he said yesterday, I believe is right. The debt ceiling and what we do about future deficits are really two separate issues. The debt ceiling debate is all about spending decisions and tax decisions that were made by Congresses and presidents going back decades. It's all about whether or not we meet the obligations that we've already approved. It's absolutely crucial that the debt ceiling get raised, and it should not be held hostage to decisions about future spending. The future spending discussion is also going on, obviously, and it is
it's pretty important as well.
It is equally important, and you have to raise the debt ceiling, or the consequences will be catastrophic. The future spending discussion, as I said, is equally important, and is not going to get settled, in my judgment. Maybe I could be wrong. I'm not part of the discussions, but it's unlikely to get fully settled between now and the beginning of August, when the debt ceiling really runs out.
So let's accept your argument that they are two separate issues. Why not treat them together? And the reason I ask this question is because Washington does this all the time. You fund my bill, or you sign my bill, and I'll fund your bridge to nowhere, right? This happens all the time. Horse trading, it's just the way business gets done in Washington. So if the Republicans don't believe that the Democrats are either serious or sincere about deficit cutting, isn't this a good way to force their hand?
Well, clearly, everyone agrees. The president, the leadership in the Congress all agree that we have to tackle the deficits, and everybody believes we have to get serious about it.
Yeah, well, the big question, though, is the when do we get serious about it, right?
These issues, this debt has been built up over a period of decades. The combination that's going to get us over the goal line between spending cuts, tax reform, and reform of entitlement programs involves hundreds of incredibly difficult decisions. Making those over the course of the next 6 or 8 weeks is going to be incredibly difficult. They're
impossible, maybe?
You never say impossible, but I think it's incredibly difficult. But when you do make them, like as happened in the 90s, when President Clinton and the Congress came together and they had, we were facing record deficits, they came together and made the hard decisions to raise revenues, cut spending, and by the time his term was done, we were taking in more than $20 billion a month more than we were spending.
You know, I want to go back to a point you made that that the debt ceiling debate is all about decisions that were made in the past. We have to pay for decisions we made in the past. Is there an appropriate analogy for this? If I didn't have enough money to cover the debts that I've incurred for past spending, the bank would cut me off.
Indeed. So one analogy I like to use is the debt ceiling debate is the equivalent of you sitting around the table with your family. Last year you bought the color TV, the new car, perhaps bought a big house. And you're sitting there and you say, a year later, gee, we're spending too much money. You could say, therefore, if we don't stop spending this amount of money, I'm going to default on the mortgage and the credit card, right, and they'll repossess your,
the alternative
your
is
car, the house.
Begging the bank for a higher credit limit.
You could,
which is effectively what we're doing.
So you could. We're not really asking for a higher limit on the credit card. Again, this debt ceiling is all about paying for the things we already agreed to.
Lee, you said these issues need to be treated separately. But at the end of the day, do you believe, separate or not, that the Republican leadership will allow the United States to default on its debt by not raising the debt ceiling?
I don't believe that they will do that at the end of the day. It would be completely irresponsible of anybody to take that risk.
So these are idle threats that we hear from people like John Boehner and Eric Cantor and even Mitch McConnell, who laid out his own set of demands for the debt ceiling just yesterday.
I don't want to characterize what members of Congress and what the leadership is saying. I think everybody recognizes the importance of doing this. They recognize that there are tremendous catastrophic consequences if they don't. But they also recognize, both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, the president, all recognize that we have to tackle the deficits as well.
So what's the incentive then for Democrats to yield to these Republican demands if at the end of the day they know, you know, everybody kind of knows that the game of brinkmanship will not be taken to the nuclear option?
I don't think it's about what the Republicans are doing that would necessarily drive the Democrats, or what the Democrats are doing that would drive the Republicans to getting to the conclusion they need to get to. Everybody recognizes, the president said this in his speech, the Republicans have said it in their statements, that we have to reduce these deficits. I think the current target that they're all talking about is something in the area of $4 trillion. And it's not about these threats. Everybody knows it's serious, and we have to do it.
Is it fair to say, with about 20 seconds left, Lee, that the longer this discussion drags on, the closer we get to that hard stop in early August, the worse it gets, that Ben Bernanke is right, interest rates, bond yields might go up, and the federal government may have, even if it can't borrow during that period, may end up having to spend a whole lot more money to service the existing debt?
Absolutely. I think that it is, as Chairman Bernanke said yesterday, it's a very risky strategy. It could cause interest rates to go up, markets to head south.
Lots at stake. Lee, thanks so much for joining us. Lee Sachs, former Assistant Treasury Secretary.